Hello, my name is Leslie Lyle.
My name is Dan Collinson.
And we're the directors of Positive Psychology Learning, and we're also the co-founders of the not-for-profit website, The Positive Psychology People.
We created the Positive Psychology People because we wanted a free resource for people to understand a bit more about positive psychology. Because it can be applied in our everyday lives, but not everyone has heard about positive psychology.
And we realise that many positive psychology practitioners, academics, researchers find that even when people have heard of positive psychology, they're often confused about what it is and frequently confuse it with positive thinking or feel it's some sort of new self-help approach.
So rather than talk about what positive psychology isn't, we've contacted some of the leading names in the field of positive psychology to ask them this question: what exactly is positive psychology?
Now, of course, there's several scientific definitions of what positive psychology is, but we wanted to ask our experts what they felt about it applied in the real world, what it meant to them, and how would they describe that to somebody who'd never heard that term before.
Now, please bear in mind this isn't some slick professional video. It's more a collection of informal conversations with people who are very, very busy and have kindly given us their time to talk about what exactly positive psychology is.
And we're being absolutely overwhelmed with how many people have stepped forward to help us with this. And what started off we thought was going to be a really short film has turned into something a lot bigger. But we're already working on some exciting new projects with many of the people that you're going to see in the following film.
So we had one other problem with making this film, and that was to find out what the running order would be. So we took a scientific approach and we've drawn names out of the hat.
So we hope you really enjoyed the film, and at the end of it you have a clear understanding of what is positive psychology.
And we'd love for you to share your views and to hear from you about what you think positive psychology is.
Positive psychology is the opportunity to change the happiness of the world.
Well, I think that when people hear the word positive psychology, they hear the word positive very loudly in their ear. And I just want to tell you that I hear the other word, psychology, very loudly. I think more than anything, positive psychology is just that. It is a psychology, and that means it is a science. Science is a particular way of finding out about the world, one that preferences systematic observation. We don't preference intuition or guesswork or philosophical musings. We are all about systematic observation. We want to be careful about generalizing learning. And so ultimately we are a science, but we're a very special type of science. We are a positive science, as that adjective suggests. So we preference a certain type of question that we ask, and we ask questions about how people function well, as opposed to their adversities, their stumbling blocks, their pathologies, and so forth. But more than anything, it is also an applied science. And that means that we want to take this body of knowledge that is dynamic and ever-changing, and we want to be able to tailor it into interventions that will improve the quality of life for all.
Yeah. And positive psychology is, in my view, the most far-reaching development in the human sciences of the past half century. And really, it's just been an eye blink of time, really, since positive psychology was christened by Marty Seligman in 2000. And already, my whole bookshelf, your whole bookshelf, I think the world's whole bookshelf in the human sciences has dramatically transformed. But positive psychology's greatest gift, and I think its most profound defining feature, is not in its answers. For example, the data sets and the answers about the good life and things like flow and optimism and resilience and courage and meaning and grit and positive contagion and the growth mindset. Yes, these answers, I don't think these are the defining feature of the discipline. I think the towering contribution and the most timeless one is that positive psychology is a transformation in the world's central question. Instead of the deficit-based question, what's wrong with the human being, that is the diagnostic search for pathologies and weaknesses and breakdowns and really the lowest levels of human existence, I think positive psychology is what I call the appreciative search or inquiry into what gives life to human systems when they're most alive, pointing to the higher reaches of well-being and showing the way from what's best and what's probable to what's next and what's possible. In other words, I think we live in worlds that our questions create, and positive psychology is literally a shift in the world's core question. And when the world's question changes, everything changes.
For me, positive psychology is the study of human flourishing. And the word flourishing, as obscure as it is actually really important because it tells us to look for life in a person, aliveness in a person. So for me, positive psychology is looking at the best of the human condition that is marked by increased vitality, greater psychological well-being, and all the things that we associate with a person who's functioning optimally. And in my world, the way I study it is I look at things like, when are people compassionate in organizations? When do people feel alive and most energetic in organizations? When do people take control and craft their work in ways that makes it meaningful to them? So those are three specific examples of applied positive psychology in work organizations.
Well, positive psychology is the science of happiness. More specifically, positive psychology is about focusing on what works. You see, traditional psychology focuses on anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, on things that do not work. Positive psychology focuses on love, happiness, strength, and virtues. Another aspect of focusing on what works relates to the questions that we ask. So, for example, a traditional therapist would first ask me, Tal, what's wrong? What's not working in your life? Or a couples counselor would first ask my wife and me, what's not going well in your relationship? Or an organizational consultant, a traditional consultant, would ask, what's not going well in your company? What are your weaknesses as a leader, as a manager? A positive psychology focusing on what works would first ask me as a therapist, what's going well in your life? What's working? Or a couples counselor would ask my wife and me, what's going well in your relationship? You wouldn't be here if nothing was working. A consultant would begin by asking, what is going well in your organization? What are your strengths as a leader, as a manager? Start with those so that we can better handle the things that are not working. So positive psychology, in a nutshell, is focusing on what works, building on that to also deal with the things that are not working.
Positive psychology is the study of three things: positive states, positive traits, and positive institutions that support those two. So I will just add that by positive states, I mean feeling great, feeling grateful, feeling proud, feeling alive. By positive traits, I mean character, and also things like talents and interests that we would consider to be positive. Character is a long list: grit, self-control, kindness, honesty, sense of humor, and so on. But things that you would say, yeah, this is something about me that I'm proud of, that I like, that I think is beneficial to other people as well. And then by positive institutions, I mean our schools, our faith institutions, our sports teams, our cultural traditions, things that really support us in feeling good and being good.
What is positive psychology? Well, positive psychology is a way of looking at things. So it's a way of looking at things in a strength-based way. We begin to look at people from a perspective of their best qualities. And we begin to look at ourselves from a perspective of our best qualities. So we begin to see that our behavior and our thinking and our feelings are actually curious or fair-minded or grateful or spiritual, or our behaviors are brave and perseverant and zestful. And we begin to see other people as prudent and kind and wise. So it's being able to take that kind of approach to bring greater benefit to other people and even to ourselves. A more formal way of looking at positive psychology is to say that it's the science of well-being, or it's the science of what's going well with people or what's best in people. And this is a science that tends to use strengths as a word to describe the best qualities of people, to describe the positive phenomenon that happen in between people, to describe the good things that happen in relationships and in organizations. And it's this area of positive psychology that can actually be used not only to boost ourselves and help us to flourish, but actually can also be used to help us to deal with problems. And it can be used as a lens to deal with these kinds of struggles and psychopathology and difficulties and all the different life challenges and sufferings that all human beings have. So positive psychology at the same time can be both.
So, what is positive psychology? Well, to me, this is the field that turned my job into a calling. This is what gave me the ability, the tools, the resources to take something I'm passionate about, which is goal setting and grit. And it gave me the ability to work with people in my field of coaching, speaking, educating, with evidence based tools that allow me to help people make a difference in their lives. So, I would say that positive psychology is about helping people to live regret free lives. And it's also the answer to the questions that you didn't even know you needed to ask. Because once you hear some of the stuff, you go, oh, that's what was missing. So for me, it is what you've been waiting to hear that you didn't know you were waiting to hear. But for me, it also turned it into a calling that's given me the tools to change a lot of lives and to make myself happier and more fulfilled in the process.
Positive psychology is about any experience, emotion, anything we go through life, anything we feel within us that allows us positive transformation. And that includes the good stuff and the bad stuff, the comfortable stuff and the uncomfortable stuff, the pain and the joy, anything that is moving within us that leads to positive change.
For me, positive psychology is all about the study of what's right with people. Psychology for many years, particularly following the Second World War, was very good at working out what was wrong with people, and we made great advances in how to fix people and how to help them be better. But positive psychology is about taking that a step further and saying, how can we take somebody who is doing okay and help them to do even better? And as a result of that, the key topics of focus within positive psychology are happiness, and especially my area, which is human strengths, how people can spend their time doing more of what they do well and also what they love to do.
Positive psychology are the researched ideas and practices that can help you navigate the highs and lows of life that we all experience from time to time. So instead of just getting by, can actually more consistently flourish.
To me, positive psychology means the scientific study of how to bring out the best in people and organizations in spite of the dark side of life. I believe that the best way to achieve the objective of positive psychology is to embrace the dark side of human existence through the dialectical principle of yin-yang. In other words, if we want to optimize well-being, we have to learn how to manage the upside of the dark side and the downside of the bright side. So I branded this approach as existential positive psychology or the second wave positive psychology. Let me illustrate how this new orientation can greatly increase the scope of positive psychology research and intervention. For example, instead of asking, how can we be happy in neutral or positive situations, we now ask, how can we find happiness by managing and transforming the inevitable negative emotions of daily stress and anxiety. Similarly, instead of asking how to make life meaningful, we now ask, how can we live a vital and meaningful life by becoming fully aware of our own mortality? Now, this line of reasoning not only takes into account the harsh realities of the human condition, but also teaches us how to harness, how to transform the negative aspects of life into positive motivation and character strength. In sum, second wave positive psychology is capable of integrating a much broader range of empirical data. It also has the heuristic value of generating new research and positive intervention to make life better for all people, regardless of their circumstances. That is my view.
My name is Lisa Sansom, and I was asked to explain what is meant by positive psychology, and here's how I explain that to people. When you think about psychology as usual, it usually deals with mental illness or personality disorders or things in the past that indicate that people are broken. But it's okay, because we can fix you. Positive psychology looks at what works well with people. What makes people happy? What makes people flourish? What makes people resilient? What makes people have great relationships? And what makes people find meaning in their lives? All of these and more are worth studying, and that is what positive psychology does.
Okay, so what is positive psychology? I thought of a nice phrase or a slogan for this would be to make life better. So I'll think about each of those words in turn. So firstly, to make. I see positive psychology as an applied discipline. It's a form of praxis. So one definition might be the art and science of improving well-being. So that's to make. Second word, life. So I see it as not just about trying to help people develop, say, more adaptive thinking patterns, whether we call these positive or helpful emotions, but trying to change all aspects of their life, their material circumstances, their social relationships, even up to including their environment in which they live. Finally, better is because we're not trying to be too prescriptive to tell people how they should be. People will have a different version of what better consists of for them. So for someone, it might be being less anxious. For someone else, it might be finding more meaning in life. So whatever better consists of for them. So for me, positive psychology in a nutshell is to make life better.
My role in life is to inspire positive change. I seek to turn managers into transformational leaders. Positive psychology is an approach that helps me do that. It helps me turn managers into leaders who see both the reality of constraint and the reality of possibility simultaneously. They become intelligent optimists who can lead change. Positive psychology is the science of the possible. It helps people and organizations flourish and exceed expectations. My name's Bob Quinn. I'm a professor at the University of Michigan and a user of positive psychology.
Positive psychology, exactly, is the study of what goes right in people's lives. So let me start with what goes right and point out that having things go well in life is not simply not having them go badly. So health is more than the absence of illness. Flourishing, happiness, well-being is more than the absence of suffering. So with that in mind, study. Let's look at the word study. We need to be able to tell the difference between the wisdom that we got from our grandmothers and the mistakes that we got from our grandmothers. And so positive psychology is the study of what's actually going on in people's lives, what happens when people do things, certain things, what leads to a greater sense of connectedness and well-being and joy and happiness. So we look at this and we gather data, we come up with ideas like, well, maybe this can explain it. Then we gather data and we use that data to figure out, are we right or are we wrong? It's not static. We keep learning new things that make us have to refine what we thought about. And it's something we can apply. Almost every human life could be better than it is right now. And so positive psychology is a source of ideas for helping people reach for greater connectedness with others, for greater joy in their lives, and for being able to deal with the suffering that we all inevitably face. So it's not just about being happy, it's about being able to face life as it is with what we have and to lead the best life that we can in the circumstances that we live in.
Now, why is not easy to answer question on positive psychology? Because it is confusing for some people. You see, positive psychology, I believe, at one point will just be psychology. It just happens to have some tools that we haven't used in psychology. So, as you know, in traditional psychology, we were concerned about helping people get better, right? Helping people get out of depression, helping them to move from, -5 all the way down the scale and come to +5. With positive psychology, we are concerned with what's good with people, what's right with people, rather than what's wrong with people.
When faced with the question of what positive psychology is, I think of two main aspects. One is that every morning we are faced with waking up and deciding what to do with that day. So that's one important thing. And the other important thing to remember is that at some point we're going to die. There are the two kind of parameters in life that are given. To me, positive psychology helps me with that question, which we're faced with every day, which is how do I decide what's worth doing that day? What is it that will make me perhaps happy? What do I think is worth doing? What do I think is valuable? What's important in life? So those questions about what might lead to a flourishing and fulfilled life, to me, positive psychology provides that route. It's that aspect of psychology which looks at happiness, well-being, flourishing. What is it about those people or organizations that thrive? So that's why I'm particularly drawn to positive psychology.
Well, positive psychology is like having this incredible box of potential. So you don't really know what's inside, but once you open it up, you realize that you have the creative ability to make all of these wonderful things and to create meaning through relationships, to better oneself, to create meaning in community, to better oneself in the work world. So positive psychology is really taking all of these great things and being able to put them into action in one's life. And of course, the outcome that we want to see is increasing a person's well-being and providing meaning in their life.
The easy way, perhaps even the classic way of answering that question, would be to say it's the scientific study of well-being or the scientific study of what makes life worth living. However, for me, that doesn't quite cut it. That isn't quite enough. And the reason why it's not enough for me comes from my work in organisations over many years as a consultant. And what I realised was if people don't have language for something, they actually don't see it. So for me, positive psychology is possibility. It's the possibility of giving language to a huge range of the best of human experience. Because as we do that, I think human capacity to understand it, live it, recognise it, will expand and grow. For me, that's positive psychology.